He was born into a world of magic, but he didn't have any magical skills of his own. So he decided he was going to become the strongest magician by taking out every monster in the dungeon with his sword. The story starts with this dude named Will, living in a world where magic is like the holy grail. But damn, my man got the short end of the stick because he ain't got no magical talent. Still, they enroll his ass in one of the fancy-ass academies. But the problem is, how the hell is a dude with zero magic gonna make it in a university like this? He decides to tackle this problem by perfecting his skills with the sword and heads off to high-level dungeons, regularly scraping with giant beasts shooting magic spells at him, which he dodges and uses his incredible speed and skills with his sword to utterly stunt on the monster and slice it in half with a single slash. That was just a warm-up, though, as he realizes he's gotta handle a bunch more of these creatures if he wants to make it out of that dungeon alive. But that ain't no biggie for him because he's done it plenty of times before. The next morning, he drags his tired ass to class, where a professor named Edward teaching them about the basics of alchemy and how to produce sulfur, which helps in the creation of explosives. Edward notices Will nodding off in the back, so he calls his name, but unaware, Will keeps snoring till Edward shouts his damn name. Will jumps up all surprised and shit. Edward calls him to the front and tells him to show the class what they just learned. Ain't no escape for Will. He gotta step up in front of everybody and demonstrate. Edward tells him it's super easy, and all he's gotta do is produce some flames and sulfur will be created. Will's hands are shaking as he pulls out his wand and starts chanting the spell for flames, but to his disappointment, not even a damn spark comes out of that wand. The whole class starts laughing at him like he's some kind of stand-up comedian. But the teacher shuts them up real quick. Edward looks at Will with disgust, wondering how the hell a theory genius like him can flop so hard in practical magic. And he wonders how Will even got selected for this academy. Then out of nowhere, this fiery-haired dude named Shen whips out his wand, all confident-like, and aims it at the stuff on the desk. He busts out his flame magic, straight up torching everything and creating sulfur, while poor Will hides behind the fire like a scaredy cat. Edward tells Shen not to do any shit like that without permission, as he immediately creates a huge crystal of sulfur with his magic spell. He starts preaching about how magic is the most important thing in this world, and how mages are straight up heroes. According to him, if you want to survive at this academy, you need to be damn good at magic, and fools who have no idea how to control magic should simply leave the academy. After class, Shen and his crew walk over to Will, trying to embarrass the dude. They say he can only handle weak-ass dungeon monsters. But then Will's childhood friend Kali steps in like a boss, telling Shen to back off, as he's much nicer than him and his group. Shen gets a little flustered but brushes it off, talking about how kindness and hard work won't mean shit without magic. Then he bounces with his goons. Will and Kali start walking together, and she tells him not to stress too much, but Will's used to this bullying crap, as he looks up at the sky and says it looks beautiful. Turns out a few years back, humans were trapped in darkness, scared of some evil spirits casting shadows all over the damn world. But luckily, 5 badass mages known as the Mage Vander stepped up and fought those evil spirits. They kicked their asses and freed the humans, showing them what the real sky looked like. These mages were known as the Mage Vander, and that title now passes down to the most powerful mages of this world. Will remembers a promise he made to his childhood friend Overpowered, who used to read him storybooks about the Mage Vander, and they made a pact with each other that they'd become the Mage Vander one day. Overpowered kept her end of the bargain, as she had crazy talent and rose up the ranks quickly, becoming the youngest Mage Vander in history, and started living in the Divine Tower, while Will's just barely hanging on, far from average, trying to hold on to that dream and promise. Later that same day, Will rolls up to meet Professor Wagner, but damn, this dude starts straight up yelling when he finds out that this Harry Potter copycat went solo into level 7 in the dungeons. Wagner warns him that one day he's gonna end up dead. Will drops to the ground and apologizes like crazy, but asks if he'll get credit for it or not. Wagner lets out a sigh and tosses him 2 credits for his troubles. Will starts celebrating, but then Wagner asks him if he's still clinging on to that Vander dream. Wagner explains that if Will wants even a tiny chance of becoming a Vander, he gotta get into the Upper Institute. To do that, he needs a boatload of credits in writing, spellwork, and fighting. But if my man can't use spells, he ain't getting no spellwork credits. So no matter how many credits he racks up in the other areas, he won't qualify. Will says no matter what, he's gonna try. So Wagner tells him he gotta graduate first, but as far as he knows, Will needs 4 more credits by the end of the week. This news shocks the hell out of Will, and he starts hunting down monsters that can give him those 4 credits. Wagner mentions this monster called Baskerville on the 6th floor that ain't been defeated yet. Will gets all hyped up and hugs his teacher, but little does he know, Shin overhears the whole thing and decides to hit up the dungeons himself. He wants to kill that monster before Will does so he can boot him out of the academy for lacking credits. Later that evening, Will enters the damn cave with his sidekick Kiki, telling her to use her nose to sniff out the monster. But Kiki ain't feeling it because the last time when Will fought a Baskerville, she got straight up roasted by its breath. On the other side, Shin and his crew step into the 6th floor, all determined to find that beast before Will does, so he gets kicked out. One of his lackeys with some pink feminist hair asks if it's a good idea for just 3 mages to venture in, but Shin shoots him a mean look, claiming he's one of the best mages in the class and can handle it. He's walking with a bunch of racist angry thoughts in his head and tells his crew to use their scan magic to track down the beast's location. When suddenly, this massive beast pops up and straight up decks the spiky-haired dude so hard, he becomes a freaking pancake on the wall. Shin's in disbelief, frozen in place, while the feminist starts shrieking like a banshee out of sheer terror. Will hears the screams and springs into action, hauling ass towards the noise because he's worried someone's getting messed up. He turns a corner and spots Shin on the ground, blasting fire at the monster. But this creature ain't phased one bit. Will recognizes it as the evil sentinel, a super tough monster worth 10 credit scores. He wonders what the hell it's doing in this dungeon level. He realizes that Shin's magic ain't jack against this beast. It just brushes off those flame blasts and keeps coming for the scared shitless boy. Will considers helping him out, but then he remembers all the times this jerk mocked him for no reason. That makes him want to shut his eyes and pretend he didn't see a thing. But then he thinks about Alferia, who always said he was the kindest person she knew. She even gave him a pair of glasses as a gift. That reminder brings him back to his true self, and he puts on the glasses just as the monster raises its weapon to finish off that cocky brat once and for all. Will blocks the monster's attack just in time, pushing it away and saving Shin's sorry ass. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Edward barges into Wagner's room and demands that he send his familiar straight into the dungeons. Turns out, Shin and his lackey snuck into the 6th floor without permission. Wagner realizes what's going down but tells Edward not to sweat it, because Will's on that same floor too. Back in the damn dungeon, Will keeps going head to head with the monster, blocking its attacks, dodging like a boss, and slicing off a finger with a swift slash to its arm. The monster gets all pissed off and tries to strike back, but Will's moving through the air like a freaking eagle, dodging that shit. Finally, the monster manages to land a hit on Will, but my man blocks it with his sword. He gets blasted back, and the monster starts chucking rocks at him, but Will slices right through them like it's nothing. He's jumping all around that monster, landing on its back and straight up stabbing it through the neck. The monster starts flailing around while Shin's jaw is on the damn floor witnessing Will's skills. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Edward is also losing his mind seeing this. While Wagner says Will is an outcast because he ain't got magic, but his strength is superhuman for a mage. Dude's tough as hell like a dwarf, and his brain's so damn sharp. He can learn an attack pattern just by glancing at someone. They watch as Will chops off the monster's arm like it's nothing, then casually strolls over to this giant-ass sword on the ground. Will effortlessly picks up that beast of a blade, and Wagner tells Edward that in a world full of magic and wizards, Will's the only damn warrior. The monster shoots an energy beam from its mouth, but Will blocks it with the giant sword, then slashes the hell out of that monster, slicing it up into tiny pieces that drop to the ground lifeless. Will walks over and helps Shin up, and the dude's still in shock. Edward's mind is blown, and he's yelling at Wagner, saying a person without magic can never surpass a magician. Then he storms out of the room all pissed off. Wagner knows Edward's hella mad right now, but he also knows that Will's story is going to become a freaking legend, as he will turn the whole damn world upside down by making Wistoria the only place where a wand and a sword meet. 5 years back, Willie was the ultimate joke at that whole school due to his lack of magic, and apparently the only reason they even let his sorry ass enroll in this school was because he was tight with Alferia. But once she became the Maja Vander, the school didn't need to fake being nice to him anymore. Willie had to put up with all that shade, but it didn't stop him from hustling hard to graduate no matter what. Wagner rolled with Willie to see the headmistress, and no doubt she had her doubts about whether Willie had what it takes for this school. But once she hands him a sword and puts him to the test, Willie straight up counters every single one of her fire spells in a split second. She's blown away and says Willie can stay in the school. Wagner's hella surprised because he didn't think it would be so damn easy to convince her. Willie ain't got no magic, but the headmistress thinks it'll be a blast having someone like Willy around. Willy asks the headmistress if he can roll with Overpowered again if he gets strong enough, and she tells him straight up he's gotta grind like crazy and not let any challenges shake him. But even then, there ain't no guarantees. But as Willy bounces, she drops a line about being excited to see what he can pull off. Fast forward to now, Willy's chilling in Wagner's class while he schools everyone on the Tower of Magic. Climbing that tower means moving up to the upper institute and reaching the top floor to become a Mage Vander. Right now, there are two ways to become a Mage Vander. Either come up with some new mind-blowing magic or rack up over 7,000 credits in this school. But let's keep it real, creating new magic is hella rare. So most students focus on earning credits. But since this is a remedial class, everyone in here is on the verge of flunking out, especially Willy. Once the classes wrap up, Kali links up with Willy and asks how he's holding up because Wagner's remedial classes are notorious for being strict as hell. Willy agrees that Wagner don't play around, but honestly, he's grateful that Wagner even bothers with remedial classes because most professors wouldn't give a damn. As they turn the corner, they catch some commotion going down, so they eavesdrop and hear Shin's crew giving him mad props for taking down the evil sentinel. They ain't questioning how he survived, but word is, when Mars woke up, all he saw was Shin standing tall next to a defeated evil sentinel. That means Shin must have straight up whooped its ass. Everybody is thinking Shin's the bomb for taking down that mega powerful evil sentinel. But deep down, Shin knows he's fronting because it was actually Willy who wrecked that monster. Just when Shin spots Willy strolling by, he takes that as a personal insult. So he marches up to Willy and starts throwing hands, trying to start a fight all over again. But now it's way harder for Shin to see Willy as some weakling because he knows Willy could straight up knock him out with one hit. But he's just choosing not to. Shin lets go of Willy's jacket and leaves, not saying a damn word. Once Shin's gone, Kali asks Willy what the hell went down between them, because something definitely went down. At the same damn time, Edward busts into Headmistress Cauldron's office like he owns the place, demanding that Willy get expelled pronto. Cauldron asks why Edward suddenly wants to expel Willy out of the blue. He is already in his 6th and final year at the academy, so they can't just boot him for no reason. Edward trying to argue that Willy can't stay in this school because he is a warrior, not a mage, and he ain't having no one without magic trying to outshine the mages. Cauldron pulls out Willy's records and points out that his grades are off the charts. His writing is on point, and his magic reports are mad insightful, so he can't use magic. But he the damn definition of a perfect student. If Willy's dream is to become a Mage Vander, Cauldron believes he could excel in any damn profession he chooses. It is the Academy's duty to produce smart-ass folks for the fated day. But Edward is saying Willy's ambition to become a Mage Vander is the problem, and Cauldron feeling him on that, so she comes up with a plan. She tells Edward to personally test Willy, and if Willy can't pass Edward's test, then he is free to kick him out if he wants. Edward asks if Cauldron is sure she wanna leave Willy's fate in the hands of his #1 hater, and Cauldron says she's fine with it since it won't make a difference. If anything, she thinks it gonna be more entertaining to have the Dark Viper Mage himself test Willy. Meanwhile, Willy getting ready for his next class and asks Kali to help him pop open his locker. She happily does that, and he apologizes for always making her do it because he ain't got no magic skills. She's cool with it. But then she peeps Willy's sword in his locker and asks if he's still training with it. Willy says he is, but he couldn't get the green light to use it while he's at school, and his roommate back in the dorm won't let him do anything risky. Later on, he and Kali roll to the library to study together, and Willy's going all in even though he already aced this shit before. Kali tells him to chill since he's already killing it in writing. But Willy says he gotta keep hustling because he can't afford to drop a single credit. Plus, he enjoys learning history from the perspectives of other races, especially because he can relate to the dwarves. They went to war against badass mages, but they never backed down despite the tough-ass challenge. Right then, Kali spots a white strand of hair on Willy's dome, and she says it's probably because he's pushing himself too hard. She offers to yank it out for him, even though Willy says she doesn't have to. But she's really all about doing it. Just when they're getting flirty, Edward sneaks up behind Willy and tells him to meet him solo in the spell hall because he got some shit to handle. A little while later, Willy shows up at the spell hall, and Edward drops the bomb that he's hooking Willy up with a special remedial class, so he better be grateful. Willy can't believe Edward's offering him a remedial class, but that just proves he ain't up to no good. Dude wants to see what Willy's really made of, so he shoots a warning shot to let Willy know it's a damn serious. Edward says if Willy can land a single strike on him, he'll score 5 spellwork credits. But if he fails, he's getting expelled on the spot. Edward also makes it clear that Willy can't say no to this test. So he starts casting a spell to take Willy out. Meanwhile, Cauldron summons Wagner to her office and apologizes for the short notice. But she thinks Wagner should know what Edward's up to. She casts a spell to show him the test Edward's giving Willy, and she forbids Wagner from interfering for any reason. She thinks it's only fair that Edward gets his request granted since Wagner got the same privilege to watch over Willy. But Wagner thinks it's too damn cruel to let Edward of all people be the one to test Willy because this dude almost became a Mage Vander. He might have failed, but he still got power equivalent to 1, so Willy's in some serious danger right now. So far, Willy's been dodging Edward's spells, but Edward's only been using weak-ass black magic, so Willy can't believe the insane power Edward's showing. Willy gotta find a way to fight back, so he tries sneaking up behind Edward and landing a kick, but Edward easily blocks it with a shield spell. That shield is too damn strong for Willy to break without a weapon, and Edward calls him hopeless for thinking a kick could penetrate a magic shield. Then Edward straight up blasts him away, and Willy starts to worry that there might be no way for him to win. Edward's just too damn strong for him right now. Edward tells Willy he'll limit himself to 2 spells, 1 for attacking with fire and 1 for defending against Willy's weak-ass moves. But even with just 1 attack spell, someone who's a master at that shit can outshine someone who's learned 1,000. At the same damn time, Edward's casting his fire spell, and Willy knows he's screwed if he gets hit with that. So he starts hauling ass, trying to run away. But Edward still manages to blast him, no matter what. And you can tell Edward's enjoying this shit because he's got that smirk like he's conducting a symphony with Willy's screams. Willy eventually falls to the ground, realizing he can't beat Edward like this. But if he had his sword, at least he could hold his ground against Edward. Outside the spell hall, Collie's been stashing her stuff in her locker, and she's hella worried about Willy because Edward asking him to come alone for remedial classes can't be a good sign. Out of nowhere, Kiki comes running in all covered in Willy's blood, desperately trying to get to his sword in his locker. So Collie realizes some real messed up shit went down with Willy, and she pops open his locker so they can grab his sword and go help him out. As Willy's lying on the ground, Edward's strolling over to him, talking about how Willy ain't never gonna be a Mage Vander if he can't top him right here. Magic always reigns supreme, even back when dwarves were at war with the mages, fighting against an army of 10,000 dwarves. But just 1 mage was enough to wipe them all out. The sword ain't never gonna compare to the wand, but even with the odds stacked against him, Willy still wanna be a Mage Vander, and he'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. Edward can't understand why Willy goes to such extremes, so he asks if Willy has some noble-ass goal he's trying to achieve. So Willy tells him it's because he wanna be by the side of the girl he loves, but Edward thinks that's a dumb-ass reason. It might sound stupid to Edward, but Willy made a promise to Alferia, and he gonna do whatever it takes to watch the sunset with her. Right then, Collie shows up at the spell hall and tosses Willy's sword to him, and now that he is finally armed, Willy is able to counter Edward's fire spell. Edward all shocked that Willy managed to cut through his spell, but he realizes it's because Willy's sword is some special shit. Still, he is hell-bent on proving that Willy ain't no match for a mage. Willy is scared shitless of Edward's flames, and if he had a choice, he would have bounced from this fight long ago. But facing Edward is the only way for Willy to move forward. So he charges at Edward, dodging all his attacks, and now that he is close enough, he slices through Edward's barrier and scratches his cheek. Edward gotta admit that Willy passed the damn test, so he gives him his 5 credits and walks off. Willy collapses on the ground from exhaustion, and Collie runs up to congratulate him on his win, but he straight up passes out. Cauldron praised Willy's performance, and the analyzer Wagner said his strategy of diving into the attack to close the distance and attack from the blind spot was straight up brilliant. And what's even more impressive is that his sword strike was strong enough to break through Edward's shield. So maybe Willy has what it takes to be a Mage Vander after all. Willy starts reminiscing about the time Alferia took off for the tower. Before she left, he promised her he'd climb that tower one day, even if he couldn't use magic. He swore he'd find a way to be with her, and when he did they'd watch the sunset together. He made her that promise, and she replied with teary eyes and a smile, saying she'd always wait for him. Then she left, and Willy couldn't hold back his tears. He tells Professor Wagner, who's standing behind him, that this is gonna be the last time he cries like that. Next thing we know, we see Willy hustling, delivering newspapers in the city to make ends meet. He bumps into a dude named Donnan who gives him some encouragement, saying he'll catch Willy at Gina's spot tomorrow. Willy keeps moving and almost trips on some stairs, but he manages to keep his balance and uses his op skills to save the newspapers from falling, except for one. He grabs that stray newspaper and starts reading it, only to find out that Alfaria did create 12 new types of magic spells. He thinks to himself that she's putting in that work, and it motivates him to do the same. Then he notices that Alfaria's placed an order with the academy. The scene switches to his dorm room where he asks Rosti if he can whip up a magic item for him. Rosti's wondering why he's in such a rush. While Willy changing his clothes, he tells him that Alfaria's put in an order, and he's gonna skip classes to head into the labyrinth and gather ice cores from the Frostwalkers. He explains that she needs a bunch of magical catalysts, and the students will get paid for however many they can gather. He lets Rosti know that he's gonna need that magic item so he can explore the 4th floor. So when Rosti sees the excitement in Willy's eyes, he can't say no. He hands him the magic item and mentions he's made some upgrades since last time. Willy thanks him, and before taking off, Rosti tosses him a piece of bread for breakfast. Later on, he explains how the Mage Queen Mercedes once said that everything comes from the dungeon, and she encouraged everyone to conquer it by using their knowledge. So we got Willy making his way to the 4th floor of the dungeon, and he peeps a bunch of students going at it with the Frostwalkers. He figures it's all because of Alfaria's orders, and he's impressed by how she can rally so many folks with just one command. He spots Shin in the mix too, blasting the Frostwalkers with his fire spells. Shin's thinking these small-time enemies ain't gonna make him stronger, and he remembers how strong Willy was when he took on the Sentinel. Willy can sense Shin's power and his thirst for blood, and he knows he won't be able to score any Frostwalkers in this spot. So he keeps going deeper into the dungeon and comes across some monsters attacking a female student. He swoops in and takes them out in a flash, so quick the girl can't even process what went down. She finally notices Willy and realizes what she saw wasn't magic, it was some badass swordplay. Willy checks if she's alright, and she nervously says she's good. She thanks him for saving her, and he introduces himself. The girl introduces herself as Iris Churchill, a 4th-year student. Then the scene switches to Professor Wagner teaching a class at the academy, and we see a bunch of students skipping out because of Alfaria's orders. He tells the students that in this world, creating new magic is such a huge accomplishment that it lets the creator advance to the tower without any conditions. He explains that new magic often gets named after its creator, like the spell Dax Darbicans named after the ancient mage Darbicans. He tells the students that if they can create new magic, they'll leave their mark in history. The students think it sounds easy, but they know it ain't that simple. Rose brings up the news they read earlier about Alfaria creating 12 new spells, saying it must be mind-blowing. The professor says it's an unprecedented achievement that nobody else has done, and Alfaria might just be the greatest mage in the history of the damn world because of it. The whole class starts wondering if this means ice magic is the top dog now, and they start thinking about joining the ice faction. Kali thinks Willy's childhood friend is amazing, and the whole academy's buzzing because of her. And Rose can't help but wonder if she's feeling jealous of Alfaria, because she's afraid Willy might be taken away by her. Kali gets all worked up hearing that, and the professor gives them a scolding for causing a commotion. Kali starts wondering if Willy went to the dungeon today just for Alfaria's sake. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, Iris realizes that Willy's the bookworm with no magical skills she's heard about. Willy feels a bit offended by that, and he learns that Iris is a 4th-year student. He starts thinking if his lack of magic talent bothers her, but she tells him without a care that she can't look down on her savior. She says he might not be able to use magic, but he's got his own talent, and she respects that. Willy's confused by her laid-back attitude towards him, and he wonders if she's here because of Alfaria's orders too. Iris confirms it, and says she wants to help out Maja Vander and do her part in holding up the sky. Willy explains that what Iris said ain't no exaggeration. He goes on to say that the folks in this world have never seen the real sky. The sky they see now is a massive barrier put up by the Maja Vander with their powerful magic. Legend has it that if the barrier falls, darkness will swallow the world, and a catastrophe will begin. The students ain't just clearing orders from the tower because they admire the Maja Vander, they believe they're doing their part in holding up the sky. Then Iris tells him she's actually met Alfaria. She explains it happened when she was all alone in the dungeon, surrounded by monsters. Willy wonders if she's got a habit of getting surrounded by monsters. Iris says back then she was in a dire situation and had accepted her grim fate. But then Alfaria freezes all the monsters in an instant, helps her up, and tells her to be careful next time. Iris gets all excited remembering that, and she mentions with sparkling eyes that they had a long chat after that. That's when Kiki notices something, and Willy goes to check it out while Iris keeps rambling. She mentions she wants to help Alfaria, but she ain't found a single Frostwalker. She thinks maybe the other students already took them all down. Her searching ability ain't finding nothing either, so she asks Willy what he's up to. Willy tells Iris that frostwalkers leave behind ice shards on their tracks, but usually, those shards are like 0.5 to 1 mm in size. But my man notices a shard that's twice as big. He figures there's a massive frostwalker up ahead, and maybe in a spot her searching ability can't reach. Iris is wondering how the hell Willy knows all this when he can't even use magic, and Willy tells her magic is cool and all, but it ain't everything, especially in a dungeon. He says he can make up for his lack of magic with his experience and wisdom. Then he gets his magic item ready to go. But suddenly Willy peeps that the frostwalker is chilling on the freaking ceiling, and my man saves Iris when it tries to attack them. Turns out, this ain't just any frostwalker, it's a frost rex, and Iris breaks it down for us, saying these beasts are like advanced versions of frostwalkers. The monster starts roaring at them, and Iris lets it slip that this bad boy is worth 6 credits, and it's the boss of the floor they are on. So this monster starts throwing beams at them, but Willy is dodging them like a boss, with Iris right beside him. Then he puts Iris down and tries to go head to head with the Frost Rex, but Iris stops him and says physical attacks don't work on that monster. She spills that this monster is also known as a dwarf killer, and it can freeze your ass with just one touch. But Willy, all confident and shit, tells her not to worry because he's beating this thing plenty of times before. The monster tries another beam attack, but Willy is dodging that shit too, and he slips under the monster. This beast can't find him, so it starts attacking all over the place, and we see Iris and Kiki are dodging its wild swings. Meanwhile, Willy's magic item is sticking to the monster, and he uses the wire tied to it to wrap the thing up, and he explains the Frost Rex is weak against fire and explosions. The monster tries to freeze his ass, but Willy lights the wire on fire, which sets off the bomb tied at the end, and boom, the monster gets blown to pieces, and Willy thinks that Rosty's magic items are the real deal. Then Iris's whole vibe changes. She gets all serious and realizes there's a big difference between the rumors and what's really going on with this snow talent. She's wondering how the hell she should report all this, and Willy suggests they just bounce because they got what they came for. So Iris switches back to her happy self and agrees with him. The scene then cuts to Iris strutting into a room inside the tower, called Mercedes Colley's, and she's changing her look as she walks. We find out she was undercover in the academy to scout out talented magicians. She enters a room where 4 out of the 5 Majavander are gathered. She wonders if she's interrupting something, but this dude named Cariot says it's all good because if the barrier was breached, the whole world would be toast by now. Tsue thinks the celestial hosts are peeping at them from the other side, but they ain't got the numbers or the strength to take them on. Eleanor says they need elite mages for the fated day, or else all that lore will turn into reality. They ask the Watcher if she found anyone worth recruiting. Iris tells them that in her search, she found this no-talent dude who's actually worth bringing in, and she says that his name is Willy. She suggests they bring him into the tower. But Cariot and Eleanor ain't too thrilled about inviting a no-talent in here, but Tsue finds this intriguing, and Eleanor says she doesn't want any more weaklings hanging around her. Tsue tells her and Cariot they're being too rigid, and he says he'd even invite a dwarf to the tower if they're a badass fighter. Eleanor gets all heated because elves and dwarves don't exactly mix well, and she wonders how a dude like Tsue even made it as a Majavander. Cariot cuts off their squabbling and says there's no need to rush things. The Grand Magic Festival's almost here, and they can make a decision then. Tsue agrees, saying talented folks should be able to make their way to the top of the tower on their own. If they can't, it means they ain't got the talent in the first place. He bounces because the meeting's over, and the others follow suit. Elfaria's the last one left, and Iris tells her that the boy she mentioned is freaking amazing. Elfaria holds the magic core collected by Willy, and she says that she'll be waiting for him. As part of the next test the students gotta participate in, they are all set to fight against golems. If you take one down, you pass. Then we see Shin and Kali are up first, and they both smash their golems like it's nothing. Meanwhile, Willy's struggling against his golem. Willy tries running behind the golem to land a solid punch, but as the students see him about to attack with his fists, they start clowning him for not using magic. This throws him off long enough for the golem to backhand him across the room. The students start leaving, satisfied with Willy's failure against his golem. But on the other end of the room, a few students are having no trouble with the golems at all. They're Lahanna and Wignall, and they both pass without a doubt. Then another student walks up and starts casting ice magic. With a wave of his wand, he sends icicle shards into all the golems, encasing them in solid blocks of ice. This is Julius, one of the top 3 students of the academy, along with the other 2. Lahanna gives props to Wignall and Julius for keeping up with her and not slacking off. Julius says he wants to declare a friendly war on them and will use his newly mastered ultimate technique to deliver their defeat when the time comes. As a token of his sincerity, he offers an ice rose to them, but neither Wignall nor Lehanna seem amused. Wignall, though, seems kinda excited for a showdown with Julius. These three are basically celebs at the school, each earning over 10,000 of the total 12,000 credits. Some think credits reflect a mage's power level, but Willy, he's nowhere near that. Right now, he doesn't even have enough credits to graduate in the first place, and this is his final year in this school. As Willy sits there, wondering what he's gonna do, Julius and his crew roll up and start trash-talking his lack of magic ability. Willy just steps aside to avoid trouble. As they leave, he hears them talking about the Grand Magic Festival, and he hadn't realized it was that time of year already. Later that day during lunch, Kali rolls up to Willy and tells him his only shot at becoming a Maja Vander is to get noticed at the Magic Festival. Just trying to graduate based on his praxis and writing ain't gonna cut it. And there have been cases of students who got scouted without even having the 7,000 credits needed to graduate. The Magic Festival is a massive event that goes down every 2 years. It's packed with all kinds of events and pulls in high mages from the tower looking to scout out fresh talent. It's where all the different magic factions throw down for the chance to recruit the best students. It's no stretch to say that getting into the Upper Institute can pretty much hinge on how you do at the festival. There are 5 factions: the Thunder faction, the Elf faction, the Fire faction, the Ice faction, and Mysterious Noah. All these factions, except for Mysterious Noah, are led by their respective Maja Vanders, so if they scout you, it's a guaranteed promotion. Willy doesn't think he's got a shot at getting chosen since he's already failing. To even get noticed, he'd need some kinda amazing magic that would blow the high mages away. And while he's right about that, there are still other ways to get scouted. Kali has heard rumors that Watchers might show up looking for talent, but Willy figures Watchers are just a fairy tale. He thinks a no talent like him's got no business at the festival, so he's planning to stay in the background and help with the preparations instead. Kali believes Willy could totally change how people see him if he entered the festival this year and showed what he's got, but Willy's still not into the idea. He thinks it'd just turn into a physical challenge if he's there. He tried entering the festival back in his second year and got booed off the stage for using physical attacks. He's still reeling from that embarrassment, so he's not keen on doing it again. Students all over the school are grinding hard for the festival, and Kali reminds Willy that besides the high mages, there'll be plenty of scouts from the capital too. Even if Willy can't make it as a Maja Vander, he might still get scouted for another job. The Magic Festival's a prime spot to show off your skills, so Kali's really pushing Willy to step up and prove himself. But Willy's still doubtful about participating if he can't use magic. Just then, Kali spots something sketchy and heads over to one of the lockers, telling Willy there's something off about it. It's hidden pretty well, but she can sense a barrier there. Willy asks if she's sure it's not just a locking spell for the locker, but Kali can tell the barrier's made to block sound and obstruct sight. She could crack it with her magic, but that might be troublesome, so she asks Kiki to take care of it instead. Once Kiki breaks the barrier, they find a secret staircase behind the lockers that leads to an underground gambling den. A bunch of students are down there betting on who'll come out on top at the Magic Festival. Kali finds it messed up that the students turned their locker room into an illegal gambling ring, but then Willy notices Shin standing across from them. He's surprised to see him there since Shin doesn't seem like the type who enjoys betting. Shin gets defensive and starts yelling at Willy to mind his own business. But Kali steps in and warns Shin that if he starts a fight with Willy for no reason, she'll make sure he regrets it. Shin backs off, so Willy asks him again what he's doing here since he's not part of the betting crowd. Shin doesn't feel the need to answer Willy's questions, but it's definitely not like he's here to see if people are betting on him. And he definitely isn't upset that no one thinks he has a chance of winning, even though he's the 4th best student in the school. Sure, the top 3 students might have slightly more credits than him, but Shin's credit score is in the high 9,000s. The only reason he ranks lower is because he failed a writing test once. Since then, he's been working a lot harder to make up for the lost credits and catch up. But his magic skills are still on par with Lehanna and the others, so he's just as likely to win at the festival as any of them, although he doesn't get why he's trying to justify himself to Willy. After that, the rest of the day goes on like usual. Once classes are over, Willy gets up to leave, but before he goes, Kali catches him and asks if he's free after school because she'd love to hang out, even if it's just going into the dungeon together. But unfortunately, Willy's got work tonight, so he can't hang with her today. Willy's working at Gina's restaurant on the outskirts of town, hustling as a waiter. He's got a tray full of food and drinks, which he brings over to Donnan. Donnan's feeling bad for Willy dude's juggling a crazy schedule, Willy's up at the crack of dawn delivering newspapers, spends his days in classes, and then wraps up his day working at Gina's spot. It's a tough life, but Willy's got no choice. He didn't score the school scholarship, so he's got to foot the bill himself. Donan mentions he heard the Grand Magic Festival is coming up soon and throws out the idea that Willy could participate. Willy's not having it, though he's not down for another round of public humiliation. Then Gina from the kitchen shouts at Willy to get back to work and calls out how Rosty's busting his ass harder than he is. Rosty's also working as a waiter tonight, but he's only doing it as a favor for Willy. It's a madhouse tonight since one of Gina's workers bailed, and all that extra work is gonna pile up on Willy unless Gina hires someone else soon. When the dinner rush dies down, Willy and Rosty are elbow deep in dishes. Rosty asks Willy if he's really cool with working here because the pay from the dwarves isn't exactly top-notch. Willy could easily hit up Wagner to help him find a better paying job, but he doesn't want to bother Wagner too much. Plus, he actually enjoys working here. The people are real, caring, and they treat him well, so Willy respects them a lot. Just when things are going smoothly, Julius rolls into the restaurant, clearly just to be a jerk. The minute he walks in, he starts ragging about the restaurant and the dwarves working there. Julius spots Willy and can't help but laugh, making nasty remarks about how a loser like Willy is only fit to hang out with barbarians like dwarves. This ticks Donan off, but the other dwarves hold him back. There's no way they can afford a clash with a mage. Julius goes on, threatening Donan not to pull any funny business. He then tells Donan and the other dwarves that they're just immigrants who ended up here after the Celestials wrecked their world. According to Julius, humans have been nice enough to let them live here without any hassle, so a dwarf like Donan has no right to give him any attitude. Donan manages to chill out because he knows there's nothing he can do right now. Everything Julius spat about dwarves being refugees is true. They came here after their world got wrecked. But even though the elves went through the same thing, dwarves still get treated like trash by the humans around here. So if Donan were to snap and go after Julius, it'd mean big trouble for all the dwarves in the city. That's just how things roll in this world. But Willy can't stand this kind of injustice. He decides today's gonna be his last shift here. Now that he's done working at Gina's place, he's free to do whatever he wants without Gina getting any blowback. First thing on his list, march over to Julius's table and tell him to take back the crap he said about the dwarves. Dwarves bust their butts and made the best of tough situations, so Julius has zero right to call them barbarians. Julius, however, couldn't care less about the dwarves or their struggles. He just kicks his plate of food at Willy and signals his two lackeys to get up and rough him up. They don't realize that tossing a plate counts as assault, so anything Willy does from now on is totally self-defense. Willy grabs the two guys by their shirts and introduces them to the floor in a major way. Julius catches a slice of the action and ends up getting his clothes pissed, which is a major hit to his pride. He's not about to let Willy get away with this. Things start to get icy as Julius pulls out his wand and goes on the attack. Willy has to dodge Julius's ice spells, but without his sword and trapped in a tight space, Julius eventually corners him with ice and pins him to the wall. Julius strides up, ready to freeze Willy solid, while Rosty's on edge, almost ready to jump in and save him. But Julius wants to see Willy beg for his life before he makes his move. Willy's eyes, though, show no fear, so Julius decides to switch things up. Instead of freezing Willy here, he's gonna save the humiliation for the Magic Festival. He wants to make Willy look bad in front of the whole school. Willy agrees to face off with Julius at the festival, and Julius throws down the gauntlet. If he wins, Willy's out of school for good. But if Willy wins, he wants an apology from Julius for dissing all the dwarves. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.